So I met up with Polly for a second interaction yesterday, and I sent her the questions that I wanted us to talk about ahead of time, but she still had a lot of trouble answering them. So when I asked her, to kind of reflect on her culture, and when I asked her about what she thinks others might think about her culture and if they're true or not, she didn't really have a lot of answers. I kind of asked her if she thought there were any stereotypes for her culture or for China. And she said because she is so immersed in her own culture and isn't really a part of a lot of other cultures, she doesn't really know of any stereotypes. One thing she said was that um, everyone might not know that in terms of family, um, students from China are not nearly as independent as American kids. So she said like her parents and most of the other Chinese students that she knows, like their parents pay for everything. So she said she knows a lot of us have to cover our own rent and food and amenities, just everything, and she doesn't pay for anything. I asked her, one thing she wished that a lot of people knew about her culture that a lot of people don't, and she said. Um, Lots of people think that China is one race, but she said that in China they have lots and lots of different races, like more than 50. And I thought that was super interesting because I had no idea. I thought China was one race, and I kind of asked her about if she had ever had anyone mistake her for being from another country in Asia, and if that's something that bothers her. And she said she would never be offended by someone thinking she was from Japan or Korea or anything. She says it would just be like trying to guess if someone was from Germany or France or England. And so that really put that in perspective for me. I asked her what she appreciated the most about her culture, and she told me that one thing she's always really loved is that everyone in China is really close and really friendly. So she said that if you ever need help with something, people are really comfortable approaching each other. People get along really well. That ties directly into the other question I asked about how her culture has influenced her. And she says Asian culture in general doesn't really want to have conflict. She said they like to stay out of problems. They like to be easy to get along with. And I thought that was really interesting because I think America is super opposite that way, and we actually talked about that when I talked about my own culture. I mentioned one thing others might see looking in on American culture is that we are all super opinionated. I think we're very stubborn people. I think people look for problems. People look for things to be offended about. So I think that American culture is super different in that way. That Polly said that she doesn't like about her culture is she thinks that sometimes the parents can be overprotective and controlling. And I thought that was interesting because I kind of think that that's a stereotype. I kind of think that that's something that Americans assume. And so I asked her if that's how her family is. And she said her family is not like that at all, but she sees on like social media and like through other people, not even anyone she personally knows, that sometimes parents can be controlling um, and overprotective when it comes to grades and when it comes to dating. So I thought it was super interesting that she was getting that assumption the same way we all kind of were. I wasn't expecting that. I also asked Polly how she felt America had kind of had an impact on her and on her like cultural beliefs. And I asked her if she felt like she had assimilated into American culture at all, or if she had um, simply just been like living here. And she told me most of her friends that she has here are from China. So she hasn't really had like an impact culturally on any American students here, and she said they haven't really had much of an impact on her. Um, I just thought that was super interesting because I was kind of expecting her to be at the adaptation level of like intercultural sensitivity. Since she's been here for 2 years, I was expecting her to have kind of picked up parts of the American culture. I thought maybe she might even be at the integration level. But I think that she is only really at the acceptance level, which is where I think I'm at. I think that she recognizes how different our culture is, and um, that things aren't the same between lots of cultures, and that she accepts that. But I don't think she's really made any active efforts to become a part of the American culture. So I was not really expecting that. So I thought that was super interesting. I took a lot away from this interaction. One thing being that we kind of have implicit stereotypes about our own cultures, which I never really thought about. But seeing how Polly reflected on something she doesn't like about her culture that she hasn't even seen firsthand, and looking at how I responded about my own culture and saying, like, oh, like we're stubborn and we're opinionated, and we love guns and we're fat, like, all of those things are stereotypes about our culture that I haven't personally experienced too many people who are really stubborn and opinionated, just a few here and there. But I think that through social media and through the way that our cultures are projected, we take that in and think about that as part of our culture, even if we haven't actually learned that, or even if we don't really think that. So another thing that I took away is that just because you are living around another culture or even in another culture doesn't mean that you're a part of it. So part of me thought that to be at the adaptation stage, like you just had to like be living in another culture. Like she's been living here for 2 years, but I still think she's only at the acceptance stage because she hasn't really made any active efforts to become a part of this culture, to change any of her behaviors. She's very open minded about it all, but she said she, doesn't feel like she's taken in any of the American culture. So I thought that was really interesting because I kind of assumed that where you live is what you're a part of, and that's not really true.